Welcome back to the Chattable podcast, where we learn real English in real life, enrich vocabulary, and feel proud. Imagine you are standing in a really filthy, chaotic, medieval livestock market.
Oh, lovely image to start the day.
Right. And you just spent all your hard-earned money on this highly valuable pig that's, tightly tied up in a canvas sack.
Yeah, you think you've got a great deal.
Exactly. But you get home, you untie the heavy string, and a feral, furious street cat just leaps directly into your face.
The absolute worst surprise.
It really is. But today, we're looking at how that exact ancient scam is somehow the only way we know how to talk about cutting-edge genetic engineering and ruthless corporate wars.
It's such a wild linguistic journey.
Yeah.
Because, these are phrases you hear constantly, right? In the news, in business meetings.
Oh, casual conversation, all the time. Our mission for this episode is to explore two of these highly evocative English phrases, specifically out of the bag and fend off, which perfectly capture the drama of modern life.
They really do. And when you unpack the mechanical reality of where they came from, it entirely rewrites how you understand the world around you.
Exactly. And I actually want to jump right into a quote I was reading yesterday that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, let's hear it.
So, a prominent group of scientists released this rather tense warning about embryo editing technology.
Wow, heavy stuff right out of the gate.
Yeah, and they specifically noted their worry that once gene editing is, quote, out of the bag, catastrophic biological errors could become massive, unstoppable, global problems.
Which is such a striking image to use in a scientific context,
Right. It sounds so casual to us.
Yeah, you have the most advanced molecular level science imaginable, and these brilliant researchers are describing it using a phrase, out of the bag, that is actually just a shortened version of the old idiom, let the cat out of the bag.
Which you normally hear when someone, accidentally spoils a movie ending.
And reveals what someone is getting for Christmas.
Exactly. But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
I get the historical reference to the cat in the bag. But gene editing isn't a secret scam. It's a very public, heavily documented scientific breakthrough. It's been on magazine covers for years.
Right, everybody knows about it.
So why do we use a phrase about exposing a dirty little secret for something scientists are doing completely out in the open?
That is exactly the right question to ask, because it points to how the psychological weight of the phrase has fundamentally mutated over time.
Okay.
You are absolutely right. Originally, the phrase was entirely about the secret. If we go back hundreds of years to those bustling medieval markets we just pictured.
The filthy livestock market.
Yes, you inevitably had dishonest sellers. These stammers would take a worthless, angry street cat, shove it into a tied-up sack, and sell it to an unsuspecting customer by claiming it was a fat, valuable pig.
A literal pig in a poke, as they used to say. The poke being the sack.
Precisely. So the buyer makes the purchase, takes the squirming sack home, and unties the string. And the moment that sack opens, the angry street cat flies out.
And the secret is completely revealed.
The scam is totally exposed. But here is where the linguistic evolution happens. Over the centuries, our collective focus shifted away from the secret itself and toward the irreversibility of the action.
Oh, I see. Because you can't put the cat back in.
Exactly. Once that furious cat is out, you cannot force it back into the sack, tie the string, and pretend it's a pig again. The reality of the physical world has permanently changed.
Okay, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's essentially, it's the law of entropy applied to language.
Oh, I like that.
It's like dropping a single drop of blue food coloring into a glass of perfectly clear water. It takes 1 second to drop it in, but no amount of advanced science can unmix that water to extract the drop back out.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Entropy.
Yeah, I always used to picture it like squeezing toothpaste out of a tube.
Oh, yeah?
You squeeze it out into a big, messy pile on the bathroom sink. It takes zero effort. But if you try to physically shove that sticky paste back inside the tiny plastic nozzle,
It is mechanically impossible.
it's out in the open, it's messy, and you just have to deal with the reality of it being out there. But your point is that the phrase has evolved past its sneaky origins.
Exactly. The toothpaste is out of the tube, the cat is out of the bag. Today, whether we are talking about a leaked corporate email, a political scandal, or a powerful new technology, once something is out of the bag, it means it is released into the wild permanently.
So practically speaking, what does this look like in the modern world? Give us an example of something entirely changing the landscape because it got out of the bag.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of recent history, a perfect real-world example is artificial intelligence.
Oh, of course.
Specifically, when Sam Altman released OpenAI's ChatGPT to the general public.
That changed everything.
Because before that exact moment, highly capable conversational AI was mostly theoretical for the average person. It was locked up in research labs. It was safely contained in the SAC.
Right.
But the moment ChatGPT went live on the internet, that technology was irreversibly out of the bag.
And the shift in the atmosphere was instantaneous. You could feel it.
Absolutely. Because it was out of the bag, every single massive tech conglomerate in the world, Google, Meta, Amazon, they immediately had to adapt to this new reality.
They couldn't ask OpenAI to kindly unrelease it.
No, they couldn't pretend the technology didn't exist. The tool was suddenly in the hands of hundreds of millions of people, and the entire global tech industry was forced to pivot their entire business models practically overnight.
And that OpenAI situation is the perfect catalyst for what happens next in the life cycle of disruption.
How so?
Well, because once a massive breakthrough like ChatGPT is completely out of the bag, the rest of the world cannot just stand still. The status quo is shattered. Companies like Google suddenly find their territory under siege.
Right, they're vulnerable.
They have to immediately protect their dominance. They literally have to brace themselves for a direct hit and fight back, which creates a completely organic bridge to our second concept for this episode.
A concept that is entirely about defensive posturing and surviving an onslaught.
Exactly. So I was looking at another quote, this time focusing on the entertainment industry. The article noted that competition in the streaming world is getting increasingly fierce, and Netflix is, quote, fending off competition by buying up rival startups.
Fending off.
Let's unpack fending off.
This is a wonderfully active physical phrasal verb. To really grasp the psychological weight of it, we have to look at its roots. Fend comes directly from the Middle English word fenden, which quite simply means to defend.
Wait, that is brilliant. So we literally just chopped off the D from the front of the word, but we kept the exact same bodily posture of defending ourselves.
We did. And here is a linguistic connection that I think perfectly illustrates that posture. The elegant, highly technical sword-fighting sport of fencing comes from this exact same root word.
No way. Fencing and fending off are cousins.
They are direct relatives. Originally, to fend off meant to physically, manually push away an attacker or to deflect a deadly weapon. Picture someone actually raising a heavy steel sword to block a strike, or forcefully shoving a hostile person away with their bare hands. That is the literal historical origin of fending off.
It's very manual.
Very. And over the centuries, it evolved metaphorically. Today, it means resisting, pushing away, or surviving any kind of unwanted pressure, rival, or attack.
But wait, why do we use that specific violent physical imagery for a modern tech company like Netflix?
What do you mean?
Well, Netflix isn't physically swinging a sword at Hulu or Disney+. They're just tweaking a digital algorithm or signing a corporate contract in a boardroom.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we apply medieval combat terms to digital business?
This brings us to a really profound psychological concept called embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition.
Yes. So our human brains evolved for physical survival in the savannah. We are biologically wired to understand and react to physical threats, like a predator jumping at us or a rival tribe member swinging a club.
Okay, that makes sense.
But we did not evolve to inherently understand abstract, invisible threats like digital streaming algorithms, market share, or search engine dominance.
So our brains have to translate the invisible threat into a physical one just to process it.
Precisely. We recycle the ancient neural circuitry of physical combat to understand corporate competition. When we say Netflix is fending off rivals, our brains are mapping the abstract concept of losing subscribers onto the physical concept of blocking a sword strike. It communicates the sheer exhaustion of the situation.
I love that you brought up exhaustion, because when you describe it that way, it makes the phrase feel physically draining.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, if Netflix is fending off competition, they aren't just sitting back in a leather chair and casually watching the market change. I picture a medieval knight constantly swinging a heavy wooden shield hour after hour, just trying to survive a chaotic battlefield. It requires active, continuous, draining energy.
That continuous energy expenditure is the defining characteristic of the phrase. And this raises an important point about how we use language to convey a state of being under siege. Let's look at a human example. Think about the pop superstar Billie Eilish.
Right, someone dealing with massive, overwhelming global fame.
Whenever she walks through a crowded international airport, her security team has to actively fend off aggressive paparazzi who are trying to shove heavy cameras into her face.
It's relentless.
Exactly. The security guards aren't politely declining interview requests. They are physically and metaphorically raising shields. They are exerting bodily energy to push back against a hostile invasive force that will not stop coming at them.
You see it in sports all the time, too, like a basketball team fending off a late fourth-quarter comeback from their opponents, or a politician fending off a barrage of difficult questions from aggressive journalists.
Or even in our daily health. Think about how we talk about our immune systems. We say we are drinking orange juice and taking vitamins to fend off a winter cold.
Right. We imagine our white blood cells putting up tiny little shields to block the virus. It all comes back to that physical resistance. Which actually brings us to the most important part of this episode for you, the listener.
The rules of usage.
Because knowing what these phrases mean and where they came from is genuinely only half the battle. If you want your English to sound completely authentic, the true test of fluency is knowing when not to use them.
I couldn't agree more. The misuse of an idiom almost always comes down to a misunderstanding of the emotional requirement behind it.
Right.
When a non-native speaker uses an idiom incorrectly, it rarely has to do with grammar. It creates a sort of cognitive dissonance for the listener because the underlying psychological state is wrong.
Okay, so let's break down the psychology of these two phrases. Let's start with our first phrase, out of the bag. What is the strict emotional requirement here, and what is a scenario where someone might accidentally misuse it?
Well, the unbreakable rule for out of the bag is that it requires a pre-existing state of secrecy, containment, or severe disruption.
Meaning it wasn't supposed to get out.
Yes. It implies that whatever was released was supposed to be hidden, or that its release is somehow dangerous and irreversible. Because of that heavy emotional baggage, it should never be used for good news that is proudly, intentionally, and safely shared.
Paint a picture for us. What does a misuse look like?
Okay, let's imagine an international student has been studying incredibly hard for years, and they finally get an acceptance letter to a top-tier university in New York City.
A joyous, triumphant occasion.
Exactly. They want to call their family and tell the world. They would not call their parents and say, the news of my acceptance letter is out of the bag.
Because if I hear someone say that, my brain unconsciously assumes there was a conspiracy to hide the acceptance.
Right.
It sounds like they were trying to keep it a dirty secret,
Yeah.
and someone maliciously leaked the information to the press.
Exactly. It completely warps the tone of the conversation. It takes a proud, happy announcement and makes it sound like a scandalous secret that was exposed against their will. It triggers that cognitive dissonance we talked about.
So what should they say?
In that joyous situation, they would simply say, I got accepted, or the news is official. You must save out of the bag for leaked corporate secrets, accidental reveals, or unstoppable technological forces like artificial intelligence.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
The underlying feeling of the phrase has to match the reality of the situation. So what about fend off? What is the golden psychological rule there?
The psychological requirement for fend off is that it strictly requires an element of hostility, annoyance, or physical danger.
Okay.
It is a defensive maneuver against something you actively want to push away from your body. Therefore, you cannot ever use it for positive, supportive, or welcoming situations.
I am trying to imagine the cognitive dissonance on that one. Like, what if your friends throw you a massive surprise birthday party?
That is the perfect counterexample. Imagine you walk into a dark room, the lights suddenly flip on, and 20 of your closest friends jump out and yell, "Surprise!"
Best feeling ever.
Right. They run up to you with gifts and hugs. Later that week, you absolutely do not tell your coworkers, I had to fend off their hugs and gifts all night.
Because if you say that, you are painting a picture of a medieval knight violently swinging a sword at your best friends.
Exactly.
It implies you aggressively hate your friends, and you are physically blocking their hugs like incoming arrows.
Yes. Saying you fended off their gifts implies you were deeply threatened, deeply annoyed, and desperately trying to escape their affection. You receive gifts, you welcome hugs, you embrace your friends, you only fend off things that seek to do you harm.
So, to you listening right now, paying attention to these underlying psychological feelings, the feeling of a broken secret and irreversible entropy for out of the bag, and the feeling of active, exhausting hostility for fend off, that is a secret sauce.
It really is.
That is what elevates your English from just stringing dictionary vocabulary words together to actually speaking with nuance, cultural awareness, and emotional intelligence. It is what makes your English sound completely natural.
It is the difference between passing a written grammar test and truly inhabiting the language.
Well, this has been an incredibly fun and illuminating journey today. We started with the concept of an irreversible release, whether it's an angry street cat ruining a medieval market scam, the inescapable law of entropy mixing food coloring in water, or the sudden disruptive explosion of gene editing and artificial intelligence.
Right, once it's out of the bag, the world changes forever.
And then we explored how human beings react to those massive changes. Because we can't process abstract threats, we put our psychological shields up. We act like ancient knights, physically fending off the pressures, the corporate competition, and the paparazzi of modern life.
It really is a testament to how vivid and grounded our language remains. Even as our world becomes increasingly digital, invisible, and abstract, we still rely on the physical weight of our history to make sense of it all.
Before we go, do you have a final provocative thought to leave our listeners with as they go about their day?
I do, and it builds exactly on that idea of physical history. If we look at both of these phrases, they are deeply rooted in highly physical, tactile situations from centuries ago.
Right.
We are talking about physically tying knots in canvas sacks for livestock scams and gripping heavy swords in ancient fights. Isn't it fascinating that hundreds of years later, in an era of invisible digital streaming algorithms and cutting-edge microscopic embryo editing, we still use the exact same ancient bodily imagery to describe our reality?
It's wild to think about.
It makes you wonder about the future. What daily, physical, mundane habits are we doing today? Maybe swiping our thumbs on a glass screen or double tapping a piece of plastic that will become the standard idioms of the 24th century. How will people hundreds of years from now describe their own unimaginable technological breakthroughs using the forgotten physical habits of our lives today?
Oh, wow. I absolutely love that. Just imagining an intergalactic politician in the year 2300 saying they are swiping left on a diplomatic peace treaty. It really makes you think about the invisible footprint we are leaving on the language right now. Well, I want to thank you all so much for joining us on this episode. Keep your ears open for these phrases out in the wild. Whether you are reading the news, watching a movie, or just listening to people talk in a coffee shop.
You'll hear them everywhere.
You really will. Once you understand the mechanics behind them, I guarantee you will start hearing them absolutely everywhere. Keep practicing, keep paying attention to those emotional nuances, and always feel proud of your growing vocabulary. We will catch you next time.